for an interactive period of questions and answers, and we hope that you will participate in that and that our panel will be able to address the questions that you have. Feel free throughout the presentation to ask questions in the chat room if you so desire. We're very respectful of your time and the commitments that you have this summer and the tasks that are before you as we begin a new school year. So our purpose today is to feature a tool that we've created for our clients and prospective clients on planning for improvement. We all know that the world of improvement changes daily, that with receivership, there are many tasks that are before you, and the toolkit, which we've entitled Planning for Improvement, a guide for districts and schools to create a successful grant application, was crafted based on the extensive experience that American Institutes for Research has had in the field of school improvement, and it's grounded in the most current research. We realize that this process of receivership and school improvement has been cumbersome, and it's our hope that after today that you realize that the toolkit in which we've created will provide your school-based leadership teams as well as the district support teams with the resource that they can fine-tune and enhance the document that you're already in the process of creating or that you are preparing to create with the extension of the deadline date. For the purpose of today and the time that we have together this morning, we have identified individuals within our team that have a valued skill set. Again, my name is Johnette Burdette. I'm currently co-leading the work that American Institutes for Research is participating in Buffalo Public Schools. We've launched a transformation leadership learning network where we're working with a cohort of principals, providing leadership coaching, support for instructional coaching, as well as support with progress monitoring. I'm joined this morning by Catherine Barber, who is a former turnaround principal and credentialed by the University of Virginia Turnaround Program. Catherine also heads our district and school improvement team with AIR. For technical support this morning, we have Melissa Raspberry, whom I'm sure you have communicated with thus far in the chat room. Melissa is an experienced and successful educator with school and district experience. Just to give you some background information in regards to American Institutes for Research, AIR is one of the largest behavioral and social science research organizations in the world, starting in 1946. Research is at our core. Everything that we do is based in research and in practice. I think we had some people join. We're glad to have you. Just a reminder, if we can mute, if you mute your phone line, unless you have a question, as well as muting your computer as you're participating in Adobe Connect, that'll help to cut down on any feedback. As an organization, we're committed to empowering schools with innovative solutions where practitioners join research. That truly is where we believe the rubber hits the road and what we do, where our researchers and our practitioners work constantly together to deliver the best of research, practice, and philosophies in regards to school improvement. AIR School Turnaround and Transformation Services build the systems and expertise needed by schools and districts to sustain improvement over the long term. As we know, school turnaround, big grants are all have a time limit and an expiration. So it's really important to us that once we go into a school or work or partner with a district, that we're constantly building the sustainability so that the processes and procedures that we put in, that we work with our clients to put in place can be sustained over the long haul. Our work, again, is based on research and turnaround and transformation, and it's supported by specific components that drive the improvement process. As you can see, I have the agenda on the screen now. So today we'll review the Planning for Improvement Toolkit for creating successful school improvement. How, as a principal or as a district leader, those resources can be used to help develop or to further develop the plans of improvements that you have in place for receivership. We will also look at key levers for school improvement, the strategies we've included in the toolkit, relevant research, and examples of how we've worked with clients across the country to implement these strategies. We will briefly review the resources for communication, discussing the importance of building trust and communicating to all stakeholders, and we'll wrap up our time together this morning with a period of questions and answers, where you as the participants have the opportunity to ask the staff from AIR who are participating on our panel questions related to developing your plans and various strategies that you may use in those plans. Any questions as we move forward? Okay. Over the years, we've developed a strong collaborative relationship with our many partners in the field. And as we've developed this relationship, we have been able to build this toolkit based on those experiences and those relationships that we've had in the field with clients. And we hope that you will find that this can be helpful as you move through the process of improvement plans as well as receivership. Realizing that you've been working through the process of receivership and school improvement grants, I realize that as district leaders and school leaders, you are very familiar with the requirements. So we just want to briefly go through this to set our stage as we look at how the toolkit can actually help you. So we realize that schools can select only indicators for which they have a baseline that they're below in the 2015-16 goals. We know that you have to select at least 5 level 1 and then an additional 5 level 2 indicators. We know that these selected indicators should relate directly to the needs and to the needs assessment, the SIG, and the school improvement plan. So we're selecting indicators from the 84 that have been offered that really speak to where the needs are in the school. Improvement areas within your school based on receivership can be the establishment of community schools, expansion or replacement of school programs, the extension of the school day and the school year, professional development for your teachers and leaders. These are just examples of areas where we can see improvement, mentoring of an at-risk student, as well as contracting with independent receivers. And as you can see, Melissa has put up a poll question. If you just take a moment to vote as we continue to go through the material, which one of these strategies have you incorporated into your plan? Please select all that apply, because we realize that in selecting up to 10 indicators, you may have multiple ones. So if you can feel free to vote there, we'll see the results being calculated as we go through the presentation. And I'll give everyone just a few minutes. So as we're planning for improvement, we want you to see the Planning for Improvement Toolkit as a resource that you can use for your schools. In order to develop an effective school improvement plan, principals should focus their attention on certain things. First and foremost, it's data and information. And I'll stay on this slide for just a few minutes to give you some background information, all of which can be found in the actual planning for improvement. We'll spend the next chunk of time on our webinar together going through the different components of the toolkit and how you can use it to get started, to actually begin to write your plans, and then how you can use the strategy section to ensure that what you have selected as your indicators are supported by strategies that are grounded in research. So in getting started, the first thing we have to look at is the data and information. Examining existing data and sources that are available to you, and then as a team determining what additional data points that you may need to collect. Time and money are huge issues in which the planning toolkit goes into in depth. If we're looking at the use of time, using as much advanced planning as possible. And I realize that you're already into the stages of planning for completing your response to receivership, but this also works for your school improvement plans and your comprehensive educational plans as well. In regards to resources, investing in the people and the time that's needed with the money that's allocated. Identifying a committed team to help develop the plan and then to increase the buy-in. In just a few moments, Catherine Barber will take us through some ideas as they relate to our communication handbook, but it's very important in putting your team together to complete the plan that you identify those members that will be committed to the process, that are committed to the vision, but also a representative of the different parts of your school building to help with buy-in as you communicate this plan out and share it with your many stakeholders. The toolkit takes us through the process of focusing on essential elements. This is where we've broken down the toolkit into areas in which we call essential elements that are important to and critical to the improvement process. For example, building leadership capacity. How do you recruit? How do you screen, hire, and then support effective leaders once they're in place? Creating systems of support for teachers. Recruiting and screening again, hiring those teachers who have the skill set to be effective in a school improvement environment, and then supporting them through their efforts. Establishing that data-driven culture, making decisions that are based on data, not decisions that are based on instinct or emotion. And this goes back also to the fact that our strategies, in which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, are grounded in research. So if they're grounded in research, it's very easy for you as a building principal or district leader to then relate those to data. Improving instruction, fostering that effective teaching practice and assessment, making sure that the curriculum that is taught is the curriculum that was written and it's the curriculum that's assessed, and continuously working through that cycle. Addressing the climate and the culture. Improving student engagement, improving student engagement and ensuring that there is involvement from all of your stakeholders, from your parents, and that we are constantly looking at staff morale and how to build that up. The work of educating students and instructional leadership is difficult and it's trying, but in an environment of improvement, we often have increased accountability and responsibility for our staff. So we need to ensure that we're always looking at that morale and we always have a tab on the pulse in the building. Focusing on the curriculum and assessments again, and fostering family and community engagement. Partnering with your community organizations, your service boards, your groups, supporting parents in their skill set so that they can continue to, so that there's an extension of the education that's happening in the building at home. And of course, using time wisely. The toolkit will also take us through understanding the funding requirements, considering how the grant will be funded, understanding the proposal requirement as you're responding to the grant. What is being asked of you? What areas are scored the highest? And then how you respond. Understanding how that application is then evaluated, and then one of probably the most critical pieces that we've seen as our work in the field in assisting clients in writing proposals or responding to school improvement grants is to define and track your writing process to ensure that all pieces are being addressed, that everyone's voice is being heard, and that you have the most updated version as you go through many, many revision stages. And all of this is outlined for you in the toolkit that we've attached and that we're talking about today. Any questions thus far? I do realize that I'm giving you a lot of information, a lot of overview information as we truly get into the meaning and the meat of this school improvement grant toolkit. And I'm sure that after our webinar today, you'll have the opportunity to look at it in a different light and with more time that you can see some of the things, hopefully, that we're highlighting today. So I want to take us into utilizing Section 5, and I mentioned this just a few minutes ago as I was trying to set up the grant toolkit. As a former principal and a leadership coach working with our principals in improvement environments, I find that Section 5, which talks about the strategies, is probably one of the best sections in this toolkit for where you are right now in responding to the receivership. So in Section 5, which is called Strategies to Help You Develop Your Plan, we address each essential element. Remember, those essential elements were the building leadership capacity, supporting teachers, your curriculum and assessment, those different headings that the toolkit is broken down into. In Section 5, this is where we look at the strategies to support those areas. So we plan to address each essential element, and in starting with the first one, which is build leadership capacity, Section 5 is extremely easy to use and will provide you with realistic but robust strategies that will lead to improvement. So they're actually listed for you. Each essential element is broken into 3 parts as you read through Section 5 on strategy. If we use those 3 parts together, it can provide the foundation for a very strong improvement plan. After the leadership team that you put together, again, in getting started, that's one of the most critical pieces, putting this team together. So after you've put the leadership team together and you've assessed the strengths and weaknesses of your school, this can be done through a formal process like a needs assessment or through a reflective process where as a team you look at the areas where you're strong and where you have challenges. Once you've gone through that process, the strategies that are listed here in this section will be helpful to develop your actual plan. Each section in this strategy section has 3 to 5 strategies that are grounded in current research. The connection to research is powerful in changing the mindset, and we talked about that just briefly with the data. Moving your organization or school forward, changing your mindset is critical, but it has to be, the process has to start with strategies that are grounded in research so you have something to base them on. The data speaks for itself in each strategy that's promoted in this section. The strategies are clear and concise, and they are easy to follow and to adapt in any current school or district. As experts in the field of school improvement and turnaround, we also offer in this section the DSI Center approach, and that's the District and School Improvement Center approach. For each of those essential elements that are listed in Section 5, along with the strategies and the research that grounds each strategy, there are also realistic and applicable examples of how we have actually done this work in conjunction with our clients and how we've supported them. How our colleagues have approached similar situations. A lot of times we get that question from prospective clients on how we've done this work with other districts, with other states, and how that story has turned out. So there's similar situations, there's structured responses to these strategies, and there's also a detailed account of those quick wins, barriers and bridges to developing, implementing, and monitoring the suggested strategies. So we're going to take a closer look at just the first strategy that's listed under building leadership. And I want to go through how those three sections are broken down and how you can use them as a building leadership team or district support. So let's take a closer look at this section and how it can be helpful for you and how you can use it. So under strategies to build leadership capacity, the toolkit suggests 4 different strategies. Again, I mentioned that for each of these essential elements, there are at least 3 to 5. In this particular one, there are 4. Characteristics of an effective leader, professional development, components of an effective school leadership team, and the last strategy is the organization chart. Again, the strategies are grounded in research, in relevant research. So for example, in this essential element of building leadership capacity, the first strategy is grounded in the research that says, according to Chenoweth and Everhart 2002, a school leadership is defined as a school-based group of individuals who work to provide a strong organizational process for school renewal and improvement. That piece of research grounds your strategy in developing the school improvement team. As principals, we know that it's vital to have an effective school leadership team. But what constitutes that team? How do you set it up, and how do you go about assigning tasks and making sure that there's accountability, and then communicating that with your school? This is all listed for you in the strategy section as you talk about developing this school leadership team, and it gives you the research you need to support why you have different members of the team, how you go about selecting them. In addition to the strategies and the research, there are suggestions on various tools to achieve the intended purpose. So if we're talking about developing a school leadership team, under this section, there's a tool to assess individuals' knowledge and how to successfully move leaders from where they are to where the organization aims to reach. In other words, we have as a strategy, building a school leadership team. We have some structures that are in place. We have the research that grounds how you build the team, how you compile it, how you make them accountable, and how you communicate that. But then we have tools on how you assess the individuals that are there, and then how you can provide professional development to support their needs. The last section is a practical example. This is the DSI Center's approach and how it outlines our efforts in leadership coaching and support for school leadership teams. So this is a case study, so to speak, that you can read on how, as an organization, we have partnered with clients in the field to support their efforts when building a school leadership team was a strategy they chose as moving their organization forward. And based on research, we believe that 2 of the most critical pieces to this is building leadership capacity and, of course, instruction. And in doing that, providing leadership coaching, and then through the coaching, that side-by-side, at-elbow coaching, also supporting the leadership team. And there's extensive information and firsthand accounts that you can read through the section that will help you in developing your plan. It further explains how we would implement those strategies, how we've worked with clients to implement them, and again, those stories that we have from the field, which are always timely. Any questions so far? Okay, we'll keep moving and being very mindful of our time together. So let's talk about building improvement and looking at communication, and I'll pass now to Catherine Barber, who will take us through some of the communication information and another resource that we have for you today. Catherine?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking time as busy principals out of your getting school started preparation time to participate in this webinar today. We know that part of the New York receivership requirements is engaging your community and having a stakeholder engagement plan. One of the other tools that we have that we wanted to share with you today is our communication planning tool. And we know that progress moves at the speed of trust. And one of the most critically important ways that we can build trust is with a communication plan that addresses and engages all of the key stakeholders in your community or within your given context. So, hang on. So let's take a look at some of the research on trust, and Tony Bright has done a tremendous amount of research on trust in his work with the Chicago Consortium of School Improvement or Turnaround Schools. And we know that trust between teachers and principals is the strongest predictor of student achievement. And it's actually such a strong predictor of student achievement that it trumps socioeconomic status. And that's a hard one sometimes for people to wrap their head around. But dependent upon that relationship between the principal and the teacher, that's really what is the predictor for improving the student achievement at the school. When there's trust between teachers and parents and the principal, when we've looked at those schools over a long period of time, they've been able to sustain their improvement process, and they've been able to maintain student achievement at the school. And so we really need to be thinking about how are we building trust, what are the different strategies that we have for communicating with our teachers, what are the strategies we have for communicating with our parents, what are the strategies we have for communicating with our district, and then identifying those other community stakeholders that are in your particular area. We've developed a communication guidebook that is a step-by-step process to help you develop a very comprehensive communication plan, and it also helps you identify who are your key stakeholders and how should you be communicating with them. I do want to note that in our upper left-hand corner, our logo is School Turnaround Transformation. And for us, we define turnaround as a dramatic transformation that takes place in a school and not referring to the federal school turnaround model. So getting back to our communication guidebook, we've used this in many districts with district leadership teams, and we've also used this with school leadership teams. As I said, if you've taken a look through it, it's a step-by-step process, and we have identified 4 steps to developing a communication plan. First, it's defining your communication goals. And one of the main things that you as principals or leaders within your district will be wanting to do is to be educating your community as to what is this receivership plan that we are having to implement, and what are the components, and why are we doing the things that we're doing, and how can you help us, and or what is your role in helping us to address the improvement efforts and initiatives at our school. It takes you through the actually developing the plan, and then there are a set of tools around how to implement the plan. Whose role is it to do what and by when, and how will you know as the principal that that happened? And then we always advocate that continuous improvement cycle and stopping periodically along the way to say, well, how are we doing? How are we doing with implementing our communication plan? Is it doing what we wanted it to do? Are we building trust? Do our stakeholders feel that we are operating in a transparent environment? Are they getting the kinds of communication that they feel is meaningful and valuable to them? And what kind of adjustments maybe do we need to make? I wanted to share with you one of my favorite tools that is in this guidebook, This is a great chart that helps you think about who are my stakeholders and how should I be communicating with them? What's the best avenue or avenues to communicate with them? Not everybody wants to get a flyer, and some people would prefer email or a robocall, or some people like the parent portal, or they can log in from work and check on things that are going on at the school. So it's getting us to think about multiple strategies to get at different kinds of groups that we need to communicate, and then also thinking about what is it that we need to communicate. What you may communicate to a parent may be different than what you're communicating to your teachers, or if you have an organization in your community that supports your school, you may provide them different kinds of communication too as well. We have had school teams, leadership teams that have used this planning document and have come up with things such as they have identified a large population of their parents are involved in soccer, and their children go to a practice on Wednesday afternoon, and so the school team chose as one of their strategies to communicate with parents to set up a table at the soccer practice session. It was a great way to be able to have communication with the parents, to hand out brochures, and for some teachers to make connections with parents that maybe wouldn't pick up the phone or come to school. So it's getting us to think about that and thinking about communicating in a very strategic kind of way. So I would encourage you to download the communication guidebook, and I would encourage you to walk through it with your school leadership team. We want to be thinking about the fact that communication builds trust, and the more that we communicate, the more trust that we build. We also want to be thinking about progress moves at the speed of trust. And if you're not making progress at the speed that you think that you should be, it may be saying to yourself, do I have trust? Do I have enough trust? Have I established it to be able to move at the speed that I want? And if not, maybe I need to go back and take a look at how I'm communicating and what I'm communicating. One of the things that we've learned in a change process and supporting elementary, middle, and high schools and all different kinds of districts through a change process is that you cannot communicate enough. And we encourage and recommend to our school leaders to over-communicate during the change process. When information is not coming out in a timely way, and you may have also been on the other end of this, people make up stories. They fill in the void. They miscommunicate. And when that miscommunication starts to happen inside of your school or your district, it oftentimes makes the work that you need to do that much more difficult, because not only do you have to introduce something new or a different way of doing things, but then you have to also climb an extra hurdle of people having had that misinformation. So over-communicate. If you don't know something, say, we don't know yet. As soon as I get this information, you will get it. So be thinking about that. Be thinking about keeping your message front and center at all times. Remind people constantly why they're there, what the mission is, what the focus is, what are the goals for the year. We've had principals that have said things like, everyone achieves, every minute counts, we need to improve our scores by 50%, and continuing to remind people, what is your message? What is your message? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is the most important thing for you? What are your priorities for this year? Be visible. When people are undergoing a change process, it's really important that the leader be visible and accessible to be able to talk to people. It's your opportunity to clear up misinformation. It's your opportunity to get your message out, and it's your opportunity to educate and inform folks about what is happening and why you're doing what you're doing. So get out, and we call this leadership by walking around. And then the last step that I would encourage you to be thinking about as you're strategizing and developing your plans, and you're starting to think about how you're going to communicate with all of your different key stakeholders, is to be thinking about how can I distribute the leadership. And this is important for a couple of different reasons. The research has shown that schools that have undergone a turnaround transformation process and have been able to sustain their improvement distributed the leadership in year 1 or 2 of their improvement process. When the leadership is not distributed, the schools may have improved slightly, but they were not able to sustain that improvement. And why this is so important is when we think about it, when we distribute the leadership, we are spreading the investment and the commitment and the buy-in to ensure that the initiative that we launch go deep down into the school and become a sustainable practice and a positive, productive, sustainable practice. So I encourage you, as you're writing your receivership plans and as you're thinking about your communication plans, to have in the back of your mind, how am I distributing the leadership? How is the distribution of the leadership evident in my receivership plan? How is it evidenced in my communication plan? If you're a principal who is in a situation where you don't feel that you can distribute your leadership, then it's thinking about how can you make this happen in year 2, because it seems to be a critical juncture in the improvement process for schools that are persistently struggling and want to improve. And with that, we are going to open it up to question and answer time. We're here, we're available to answer any questions you may have on the toolkit, on the communication guidebook, or any questions you may have about strategies that you're considering for your receivership plan. And I will hand it back to Johnette to facilitate this question and answer period. The last webinar and the last part of our time
the question and answer I'm just leave this slide up that has 3 suggestions. This way um, take the route go to the chat box. ask that need to be asked, or you can ask your questions verbally through the phone line or through the speakers on your computer. Remember to unmute as you ask your questions, and hopefully our facilitators, our team that's joining us today from AIR will be able to address the questions that you have. So I want to open it up now. I've realized that we've given you quite a bit of information. I also realize that since you've been working through receivership for the majority of the summer, that this may have been a review for many of you. Maybe you are looking at the plans that you've written in a new light based on the toolkit and the information that Catherine has shared through the communication guidebook. I've been monitoring the chat window, and I saw that you the background how you communicate to make sure that they, and you have some questions and we